We want to welcome everyone to this wonderful presentation by artist Ada Brown. And the introduction will be done by the SCWCA co-chair for Artist Talk, Nancy Spiller.
Okay. Ada Polini Brown was born in Queens, New York, graduated from the High School of Art and Design, earned a BA in studio art from Queens College of the City University of New York, and an MFA from the University of Houston. She has been an artist in residence at the Vermont Studio Center and the Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop in New York City. While still in New York, she worked for art historian Barbara Rose at the Journal of Art and for the Theo Westrich Art Advisory Service. Her work is held in private and public collections, including the Blanton Museum of Art at the University of Texas, the Visual Arts and Crafts Academy of Germiston, South Africa, the UC Santa Barbara Archives, and the Prints and Drawing Collection of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. She has had solo exhibitions at the South Carolina's Presbyterian College, New York City Island Focal Point Gallery, New York's Ward Nass Gallery, and Santa Monica's Schomburg Gallery, Los Angeles's Sabina Lee Gallery, and Whittier's Rio Honda College Art Gallery. In 2022, she co-curated with Jill Sykes the exhibition Let Me Talk for the Brand Library and Art Center Gallery, exhibiting her work along with 23 other prominent California artists. She recently retired from over 15 years as a tenured professor of arts and cultural programs at Rio Hondo College and devoted more than 20 years to directing Brentwood Art Center's travel residency program, R Travel. Since 2007, she has hosted a life drawing and painting workshop in her Alhambra home studio. She also maintains a studio at Los Angeles's Brewery Artist Colony, where she regularly participates in their art walks. Her art is based in drawing and painting from life, both figure and landscape. She considers her work a meditation on the circumstances of her life as a female born into a time of great social, political, and environmental stress. Her current bodies of work include Living Veiled and The Migrants, reflecting her interest in women's lives. Her most recent series is Sky Views, titled Through the Empyrean, which she began during the COVID lockdown. She considers them a return and newfound approach to landscape. Betty Ann Brown, writing in Art and Cake, said, Brown's careful articulation of light and dark recalls the cloud paintings of British artist John Constable, adding that Ada Brown's romanticism is a, quote, reminder that our environment is instead a threatened, endangered realm. Nancy K. Turner, writing in May 2022, says Brown's evocative and pensive art of social concern does not provide answers, instead nudging viewers into a private space to wrestle with their conscience. With that, it is my pleasure to turn the evening over to Ada Polini Brown.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Very well written. I really appreciate that. I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint about my work and tell you a little bit about who I am and where I came from. You've got a little bit of my background, but how that relates to the work that I'm producing. I began as my studies as pretty much a figurative artist and learned how to paint and draw at Queens College and throughout my early career. And I still draw today. That drawing, the painting, just let me go back, that's a self-portrait done in probably 2012. I do many self-portraits. When I was younger, I decided I'd do a self-portrait every birthday, but I've skipped a few since. I work from the figure, as Nancy said, in my studio. I hold a workshop. It's not instructed. It's just for a group of professional artists and friends who like to draw, and we share the cost of a model. I find this a discipline that keeps me on on track with that skill that I've learned, because it's easy to lose if you don't do it for a while. So I enjoy drawing, and it's always a part of my practice. I've painted the figure a lot. I taught life drawing, and so the figure was always an important part of what I was doing. And I was painting women. I wanted to paint the female figure, and I wanted to make her powerful. And so there was that. But how do you make a dude powerful in a world where she was always for the male's gaze? And then I got interested in masks as well. So I explored all of that as I went going around in my work, and working the figure, and then looking at that figure and looking at her almost as an abstract form, I started doing vessels. And they are figures to me. They are women's figures. And I have to say, my mom, who was not very well educated, but one of the smartest people I ever knew, I asked her as a child, I remember asking her, why do they call ships and boats and cars her? And I said, why do they call vessels her? And she said, well, because they carry life within. And I just loved that metaphor as the womb. So for me, the vessel becomes that. And it was a way to look at color and form and shape on a canvas, but also, and paint what I saw, but also played with that idea of the figure. Now I threw this in here. I don't know if it's the right place, but this is the program that I started with the Brentwood Art Center and worked on for over 20 years. I started teaching when I was in New York. When I came back from Houston, had a loft in New York, and I was teaching at the Y. I taught at Sing Sing Prison. I taught art all over New York City. But it wasn't until I moved, and I did teach for a travel program, rather, which was in France and in Italy at the time. I did that for about 5 years. And then I moved to Los Angeles. And it was in Los Angeles at the Brentwood Art Center where I was teaching. They asked me to create a travel program for them. So we did. And these are just the names of places we went. And I say this because this is what I did as a teacher. I was demonstrating out in the field. This is my gear for these students. And you can see students and people working here. And we did it year after year. And it was a really fun summer. And I created a lot of paintings. Often they would just be something I began as a demo, and then I would finish up in the summer or when I got back. But usually it was during that summer time period that I was in Europe. And they had to get smaller and smaller as time went by, because the airlines wouldn't let you take big portfolios. So they had to fit in smaller and smaller cases. And I've been dragged off of planes with my art supplies because they thought I was a security threat. And they had to check all my tubes of paint. So I love travel. I love travel, and I love painting outdoors. And then one summer while traveling, oh, this works two ways. I was on a flight to Orly. I wrote this in here. And the woman behind me was dressed in black from head to toe in a traditional niqab. She pinches my arm and tugs at my sleeveless top, and she's pointing at me. And she is scolding me for being in a tank top. And I look at her, and she's veiled from head to toe. And I motion at her like, aren't you hot? This is crazy. And I could see that she was smiling with her eyes. It was not a nasty gesture. It was a nice gesture. So she was smiling at me, and I was smiling at her. And we both looked at each other and shrugged our shoulders and went to our different ends of the waiting area. And it interested me, and I came back to LA, and I had my model working for me, and she happened to be an Israeli young woman, and who's living there now. She's all right. And after I asked her to put a sheet around herself that she had over her shoulders and to cover her face. And then I asked her to smile with her eyes, and she said, I know exactly what it's supposed to look like. And she did this. And so this is one of the first drawings that I did of the idea of being veiled. And then I started doing, this is a scratch board. I started doing scratch boards of it. And it really intrigued me. And I started reading books as to why women were veiled. Why are they being veiled? And I just found it fascinating. I spent some time in Turkey looking at mosques and all these beautiful tile works. So the colors were intriguing to me. And the women were in Istanbul were some fashionably dressed in modern 20th century clothes, and some still dressed in this medieval costume. So painting that made me kind of look at the cultural differences, but also how my background may relate to that. And I found some humor in it as well. While in Venice, there was a young woman taking a selfie of herself in this full garb, and two sisters kind of chatting and talking with each other. And they felt like, I didn't know, it was just sort of funny and interesting to watch this world that they lived in and why they lived that way. And then I realized that I lived in that world. When I was growing up, that nun in that costume, who was in my catechism class teaching me about religion or whatever. And that woman's costume of the niqab comes from the same period. They both come from the Middle Ages. And the woman in the middle is the veiled woman, which I had to wear a veil for my Holy Communion, rather. And then I did my confirmation, and I told my mother, I'm out of here, no more church. But it was that veil that I was also expected to wear when I was married. So the expectations for women and how we dress and what it is we wear interested me in the work. And so I wanted to start investigating that and painting it. That brought me into looking at other things as well in the world. And one of them is what's happening in our environment between wars and climate and climate change, mainly, and war, which is creating a huge migration. There are more people migrating the earth right now than any time that we know of in history. They're moving from place to place and trying to get away from the things that are happening and around the world. And this painting, which is 48 by 48 inches, I gave it a gold border. I wanted to make it look like a frame, and painted it with gold. And this pattern that you see back here comes from a stencil that I purchased in an art store in Turkey, in Istanbul. I just always go to art stores no matter where I'm traveling. And so I painted this as a migration and of people in the Middle East who are moving all over the place. Oops, going the wrong way. And then the African children running, and I call this one Run. And the stamp that you see, this is a wood block stamp, and it's I purchased it at the British Museum, but they're carved in Africa and used to stamp fabric patterns. So I used it on the painting all over. And this is another 48 by 48 panel. And then, of course, in 1919, 1920, we were suffering, 2019 and 2020, we were suffering with the policies at the border, which were caging children. And so I became very intrigued by this idea of the caged patterning, and that I had to paint that cage pattern. So that really kind of excited me as a subject to bring out to other people, to show what was going on in our world in a way that was beautiful. And this is the work shown at the Brand Gallery, Art Center and Gallery. And this is how they looked on the wall there. It took up a large space. It's like 144 inches altogether if they were close, but it took larger than that. Then 2020 hits, and it's COVID. The world changes in so many ways. I had been invited in 2019.
The act of a real cat.
Hello. Oh, I had been invited in 2019 to see a performance of the Heidi Deckler dance company while they were practicing the work. And I went to this church in LA where they were doing this, and this young woman was dancing in these clothes on a ledge. And I just thought, God, isn't that what we're, by 2020 happened, I started to pull out some images and photos I had of this dance project, which never came to fruition for making art for them. But I took that and I decided that's what we're all doing right now in 2020. We're all dancing on the edge and we're about to fall off. So this is an 80 by 60 oil on canvas as well. Please stop me if you have a question. Then I started doing a project that Christine Shoemaker had organized with her shoebox organization that she does. And she paired up artists to do a call and response. And I did a call and response with a young woman named Joy Ray. And Joy and I started with this monoprint, and it was a cutout stencil that I cut out and created of a figure raising his hands. And this was what was always going on in 2020, COVID time. And then these poor kids are getting shot and these poor people are getting killed. So I ended up working that into it, and it's called Don't Shoot, the series. And this is collage with that stamping from that stamp that I had. And then this one is called The Probability of Circumstances. It's a 40 by 40 inch canvas. And this one is called Stand Up. And that's just 12 by 16 inch on handmade paper, watercolor. And then I was asked to do, I was asked to do something for the election for a website and group that was doing that. And I took 4 paintings that I had done. One of my veiled women, this one, which I called Saint COVID, which is a doctor with full mask and everything on him. And then 2 other paintings I had done of models. And I cropped them into squares and did this digitally using these 4 paintings to create a vote poster. And it got pretty good. It got used quite a bit, and they liked it. So I was happy for that. And I post it now every election, so you'll be seeing it again. Well, this COVID period of lockdown also caused no models, no travel, and I was home walking my dogs, and the skies were incredible. The skies were of rain, and fires were causing all sorts of wild looking skies that I could see in my backyard, just a small backyard. I could look up and see it. So I started to look up through the Empyrean, and it's the highest, it's a Greek origin. It means the highest heaven. And it's, you can read this or see it, but it means fiery also. It comes from the word pyre, pyrite, pyro are related to that Greek word. And the ancients believed that this was the top of the earth. And if you went further up, you'd be into the firmament, which would be fiery. So I felt like when I was looking up at the sky that this was this endless possibility, but I didn't want to just paint a sky as I would in a landscape. So this is a 12 by 12, very tiny oil on linen. And I just started to think, what else could I do with it? And what I did was I started to frame it into a small window frame within the surface. And it does 2 things. It creates a space that's flat while you have a space that's going back in depth through painting of the sky. And at the same time, it creates an idea that this is a window and you can only see this far. You can't really see all of the rest that's out there, which is what I kind of felt like when I was in my courtyard looking up at the sky during COVID. So I started painting the skies and different colors, different environments. These are all very small, 12 by 12, and I call them Through the Empyrean. And circles came in, not just rectangles. So the idea of a circle. And I wanted to kind of stick with simple platonic forms. I didn't want to elaborate on other shapes and things. I tried trapezoids, I tried other things, and really it was just the circle or the square or the rectangle that seemed to work for me. So I kept building these Empyrean oil on canvases, the 20, this was 16 by 20, sky view circled, sky view boxed, sunset circle into the firmament, Through the Empyrean. And I just kept working through these paintings. This one's called Sky Sweep. My thing here is in my way, so I can't even read my own text. I wonder if I can move it. Sorry. Yes, I can. Put it up there. Thank you. Sky Sweep. Night, 30 by 40. The golden line. And when I started the golden line, I began using gold leaf, which I had used in the other paintings of the veiled women. And I just sort of, why not just a golden line and make it that? And so I put that in that space. It does not delineate land and sea. It's not meant to do anything other than to be on the surface of that painting. And this one I call Skyline. And it's 4 panels, there 4 canvases, 20 by 20 each, so it's an 80-inch overall. Sky ring through the inferior.
From Dyson has scattered the bottoms.
I don't know why that's doing that, sorry. Through the inferium, this was done this year. It's 48 by 42. And then I started doing some tondos. This is a 12-inch tondo with the gold leaf line running through this skylines. This one I called Golden Line from Fragonard. It just reminded me of Fragonard's swing. And it was really nice. I had it hung in the art walk one year. That year, it was just recently, and a woman walked through and said, "Oh, it's like Fragonard's swing," and she got it. She got why I got it, and so she ended up buying the painting, which was really nice. Red Sky. This is on panel, and it was at the at a show here at the brewery that they had for called the Dot Show, and that's my studio. This is where I work. In my house, although I have a space at the brewery, I only use it as a storage space, so I can keep all the really big paintings in storage at the studio, and then I can open up for the art walks. But my house that we ended up buying, we bought for the garage. The realtor was a little upset with us because we didn't care about seeing the house. We just wanted to see the garage, and we went inside and measured it and said, okay, we'll take the house. So we have this great workspace to work in, which I really enjoy. And last, I'll just tell you that I have 2 shows, Old Broads in San Bernardino, OBSB, and that's coming on the 25th. So I have a couple of a new sky painting going in there. And then this Cloud 9, there are 9 artists. That's my painting there, but there are 9 artists by the coastline at the Coastline Art Gallery in Newport Beach at Coastline College. And that'll be opening in January with the reception in March. So that's what I've been doing as an artist. And Sandra and you guys wanted to know a little bit about like what I've done in terms of activism and what it is I do as not just as an artist, because I don't always mix my art with that kind of activism, but I do certainly do a lot of volunteer work, or have, for lots of organizations. I was a part of the Women's Action Coalition in New York. I was their treasurer. I worked at Self-Help Graphics as a treasurer also, but I worked there for Sister Karen for a while. The Downtown Arts Development Association, DADA, I worked with them as well. And of course, SCWCA, Southern California Women's Caucus for Art. I was the treasurer and the president of the organization for a little bit. And the Brewery Art Walk Association. So those are things that I've worked on besides going to so many protests over my lifetime. I'm really getting tired of it, but I've been to marching against wars since 1970. It's like, it's getting old. So I do a little of that, and I love teaching, but I'm retired now, and I'm really happy to be retired. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you for that wonderful walk through your career as an artist. I mean, just beautiful imagery and very thoughtful and thought-provoking work that you're doing and have done. I was just really curious about with the veiled women and the research that you did. What was it in the Middle Ages that why were they putting veils on? Why did they decide women should be covered up?
Well, women were dressed modestly forever, but the idea of a religious woman really needed one to be much more. I'm going to go back and find that picture. You needed to have the religious modesty. So modesty was really the main word. The Quran talks about being modest and covering, and in the Catholic Church as well, the nun is not supposed to be available. So a lot of, even the ancient Romans, when they had the Vestal Virgins and things, they would be veiled at certain times because they weren't available for men. And it's the idea that I think it's just men lecherous men should not be looking at women. And so it was a way to provide modesty. And I think that was the main reason for it. And the same idea of the bride being veiled is exactly the same thing. She wears white for her virginity, and she is veiled. And my mother, who was born in Sicily, remembers how they hang the sheets out at the end of the wedding to make sure that she had blood on the sheets, and then it meant she was pure. So there was a kind of idea that a woman needs to be pure. And I think it probably just goes back to when men figured out it was their sperm that got women pregnant. I don't know. I mean, it goes back to cavemen probably.
Okay. Thank you for that.
They didn't wear the costumes.
Yeah.
The Middle Ages was probably, the greatest point from the Byzantine Empire to the Roman Empire, to changing to the Byzantine Empire and changing into a much more orthodox religious way of living.
Mm-hmm. And just one other question is those blocks that you have that you were printing on the canvases with, what are the size of the blocks that you had, the block printing for fabric?
They're probably about 6 inches by 6 inches, and then a couple down 4 inches by 4 inches. I forgot to bring them. I was going to bring them in. They're outside in the studio.
Yeah, they're very effective. They're great.
Yeah, and I got them at the British Museum in the gift shop. They were made in Africa, but you can find them even in India. They do them, and they're really large. And the Japanese also have them very large. And they have like a little way to handle, but you do it to stamp dyes or wax to do a resist dyeing.
I'd just like to say that these images are just so beautifully painted. They're really wonderful. And I've so enjoyed looking at them. I have a question. I know this is so crazy. This sounds so crazy, but I was really fixated on one of the images of a little girl walking with a grown-up. And did she have one foot going one way and one foot going the other way?
You're talking about the runners? Let's see.
The little girl holding, no, that one.
Yeah, no, what you're seeing is there's her foot flat, and then this foot is running this way. She's got her knee up, and that foot is coming toward
Okay.
The other one is on the ground going that way. Yeah,
I
that was a
thought
hard
there
one.
was some symbolism that I was missing.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it could look like it's going the other way, but that's what happens when you're doing a silhouette.
Right.
I used to tell that to my students. You do a silhouette of the figure forward, and then you do a silhouette of the figure from the back. It's the same. It's just,
all right. Well, forgive me
I
for
tell you
being
the
so
sum.
obsessive.
No, I get it. I was obsessed with that myself, having problems figuring it out. And then I was like, the hell with it.
But it's a great image. I love it.
It was
anyway, thank you for this.
Yeah, these images came from news reels and things that I was doing research about people running, and this was an actual fire that these children were running from. Their village was being burnt.
Oh,
so these African kids. So it's just, anyway, thank you for the question.
It's such a wonderful mix of representation and yet abstraction. You've done such a beautiful, not just execution, but wonderful selection of what gets pulled forward and presented. There's just enough context to sort of situate, and yet it leaves open and really invites you to consider it in a wider way. And between the migrants and then the Sky series, I find these, I'm not quite sure the word that you use, but the lines that are in the paintings, terrific.
Oh, you mean the circles and the rectangles? Yeah.
Yeah, just the way they are present in the space.
Well, I think the key there is what you're talking about formally when you talk about abstraction and realism, that one of the realist painting works to break the surface of the canvas into the dimension going in. It's like the invention of 1 and 2 point perspective created a whole new world for artists to work with that didn't exist before. It was flatter. But then abstract painting decided to come back to be flat. And then later painting even had collage on it and came out into the room. So it's this game of space artists have been playing since the earliest painters. And that space that the sky creates, I find enchanting and mysterious, and it goes on forever. And I love it. But at the same time, it's a painting, and I'm reminding you we're coming back to that circle. So the circle can have a meaning for something else, but it can also be just formally, that's what they do, is they create space, which are portals in a way into the sky, but at the same time, they're on the second dimension of the canvas. I always thought of painting as abstract, even when it was figurative.
Right.
And I think it's because my best teacher, and I see Nancy's on. Hey, Nancy. My best teacher at Queens College, she went to Queens College also, but my best teacher at Queens College that I absolutely loved was a woman named Rosemary Beck. And in the 1950s, Rosemary Beck was an abstract expressionist painter. And she studied with a lot of the top abstract people around and showed with them. And she then in the late 60s decided to become a figurative painter. And she taught figurative painting, but she did not see it as two different things. Everybody else did, but she didn't. And there's a part of me that has that same feeling about painting, that it's just painting. If it has narrative and subject, it can be inside my head and you can see whatever you want. So I'm not telling you what to see. But the less I tell you about, I guess you get to see more, but I also want to direct you in something.
Are you currently painting more skies?
I am, because the Cloud9 show is up, and I'm also, I've done a couple of sky paintings for the show in San Bernardino. I've got 3 going. I have to pick one, and I got to do it by Sunday. But I painted a flower in front of it instead, on one of the skies, instead of a rectangle. And it's just because I went to the store and bought some beautiful lilies and thought, oh, I like this. So I'll paint it. And it's like, that's, you know, I'm still painting the skies though. They intrigue me. And I enjoy now the tondos, and I bought some bigger ones, but these are small that I've been doing. But there's something about breaking the form onto something as round instead of a rectangle, is something entirely different. So it's kind of fun. I'm enjoying these.
Are these painted on round canvases, or is this on paper? Oh, it's on panel.
This particular one is on panel, and it's small. It's 10-inch panel. And these were given to each of the artists who are in the Painted Dot show. Everyone was given a panel the same size, and we each had to come make something of it. So that was painted on panel. The others are canvas, and these are stretched canvases.
I see.
I don't stretch them because that would cause too much chaos. It's really tough to paint, to get that fabric to fold in the right way. But this is oil on canvas, and it's 12 inches.
Do you know of a way to frame a canvas like that if someone wanted to purchase it and frame it?
Yes, I would put it on a square frame with you can have it like a floating box, you know, you could do that.
Okay,
Yeah. So people, you can frame it.
a square floating frame.
Yeah, actually, but I have a panel painting that I did of a circle, and then I put it in a square with a mat behind it. So it can be done that way. Yeah.
Okay. Or if you paint the sides and there's no staples, they could just put it right up on the wall.
That's exactly. There's no staples on the sides of these, and I left them. I didn't paint them. I left it white. I don't paint. I don't do wraparound paint. I don't really like that, so I just left the white edge.
It's hard to keep it clean. Yeah,
I tape it before I paint it.
Yeah, but for the circle,
that tape does not come off until I varnish it.
Okay.
Very end.
I love the gold leaf on that. Did you enjoy working with the gold leaf? I've never tried that myself. I was curious.
It's hard. I found it, I'm much more of a messy kind of painter, and then I have to calm myself down and be less phonetic and really just do the gold leaf, because if you blow it, you blow it. And then I can paint over it anyway and do whatever I want. But getting it right and getting that edge is taping it and making sure that you're in the right place. And once you put that adhesive down, you are doomed. It's going to go wherever that adhesive is. So you have to really put that part down. And the part that makes me crazy, I don't know why the people who invented the adhesive don't put a color in it. And I don't know if you can add a color, but it's clear. So you can't even see where the darn adhesive is. And if it slips under the tape or it gets a little dot somewhere, like if you have a little speck of adhesive there while you're painting that line with adhesive, and then you have to put the gold leaf over the whole thing and rub it away, that little speck is going to be there and you have to sit there and scrape it out. So it's pretty nerve-wracking, I find it. But
Is there such a thing as gold oil paint?
yes, as a matter of fact, in these larger veiled women paintings, I didn't do gold leaf on all of them. I used a little bit on some, but let's see if I can go back and find it. But they are like in here, this is painted with gold paint. And what I did on these guys, I wanted this to have a surface texture. So I put a gesso underneath and made a really rich texture of surface. And then I painted it with gold paint. So they look like, and here I actually even used one of the stencils to create that texture that this particular stencil gave me. And then I edged it with red and then put blue and then put another gold. That line is gold paint. So this is all gold paint.
Yeah.
But on the veiled women, this is gold paint as well.
Oh, wow.
I did do some that had some gold leaf, but this is gold paint. So they do make a pretty good gold paint.
Ada, Cheryl Book out here.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hey, sorry about no video. We have a COVID household.
Oh, I'm
COVID.
sorry.
Lay my head down. So I've been seeing your posts on social media, your sky paintings.
Thank you.
So when I saw you were doing tonight, I've always loved your work. So it's really fun to see a body of it. But I enjoy seeing it on social media. So keep posting. You're inspiring me to get back in my studio and paint again.
Oh, that's good. Once you feel better, I hope. I had COVID not last August, the year before August, I caught it. And I was fully vaccinated at a certain point. And I was waiting for the next shot to come for Omicron, I guess it was. I needed to wait for October, and I caught it in August.
Yeah, I know. It's going around in Joshua Tree. We had an event on Sunday and 5 people that were there all got tested positive yesterday. But I want to tell you, I'll see you from time to time at the brewery. I signed an office space there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, with Christine. So I'll be seeing you after the first of the year when you are participating.
Yeah, I don't go there a whole lot except to like visit with friends and stuff, and then because I use it for storage, but I open up for the art walk.
I know that made me laugh. It's great.
So I'm there.
So back to your gold paint. Are you using golden by chance for your gold paint? Because that's my favorite.
I am using golden, and also there's one by Winsor Newton. So I like both. So yeah, they're both pretty good.
Cool.
It's not gold, it's oil paint, it's not acrylic.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, it's nice. I just want to tell you, you're an inspiration.
Oh God, thank you. That's so nice.
Following you on Instagram.
Good. Good.
Beautiful. I love the sky paintings. I see a picture in the gallery there.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, it's kind of cohesive because it has a color. You're in a color world. That's the sky. Everybody knows that.
Yeah. Were you looking at the California skies, or were they?
And this was all in my neighborhood. Most of the skies were out my window.
Los Angeles, or?
Yeah, right here.
Wow.
Right here in Alhambra. And it's like different times of the day. I get up very early. So 5 and 6 in the morning when the light starts coming, I'm taking pictures of the sky and walking the dog and doing that. And then in the evening. So tonight the sky was fabulous. We had really great skies here tonight. I grew up in New York City, and in New York City, you come out of the subway and you see a little narrow piece of sky between buildings. And that's your space of sky. And for me, LA is expansive. You come out west. When I went to Houston, it was a huge sky, but it didn't have very interesting clouds. But here in LA, because we have some weather, I guess, of late, It's beautiful, the sky, and I feel very expansive. And I think that was the kind of beginnings of also being locked down in COVID. And I knew I could only see this little piece of it, but I knew it was bigger. And it was just, that was the freedom that was there when we were locked down. It's the sky, you know. And now I have to recommend to you guys, I saw the IMAX movie on the James Webb space telegraph, I can't say it. And it was so fabulous. It was at the Science Museum. I mean, that's where we're looking at the sky and the heavens now, and we're going back in space and time with that tool. I wrote it down here. So I would remember to say it to you, but that was a beautiful film. And it's just, again, it's kind of what I see as the sky. It's like the James Webb Space Telescope. That telescope is traveling through the inferium. So for me, that's like another place that's kind of interesting to me.
I just have to say one other thing in regards to the portraits that you have that were in the Can We Talk show of the women with the children. Yeah, every time I look at them, I think that this should be like a book, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I could do so much more because there are more people around the world moving, and it started in 2018 and went on through 2020. There's these 3, and then I have a bunch of works on paper and smaller pieces that I did that were studies to get to these, which I couldn't show you all, but it's not ending. So I can't, it's not ending. It's getting worse. So it would be a book, and it would be a book where someone also would be really write the history of what's happening and what's happened.
No, but they're just beautiful and very poignant.
I wanted to save mothers and children. I mean, the 2 Africans are 2 children, and the woman and her child, and then the woman with her little girl she's holding and her child. That was that the funny story about that was I was so obsessed with doing this, I couldn't find any image that I really wanted. And one day I was coming out of and this was now 2020, and I went to my health club, and I'm coming out of the health club, and there was this young woman holding her child's hand. She didn't have the baby in her hand, but I just started from behind. I was clicking my photographs of her, trying to catch them walking. And then I just put the baby in her hand, in her arms, because I thought we needed that too.
Yeah, no, it's very effective.
Yeah, it makes it powerful against that light or whatever's going on in the background, which
the way you put the clothes on, the pattern on top of the silhouette, that works really well. It's a silhouette, yet it still has detail. It's a beautiful way you in the first one there on the left with the
the
girl
running
in the dress.
yeah
And
it was fun to make that surface. So they have a real surface to them, these paintings.
Well, does anyone else have any other questions, or should we wrap it up for the evening and thank Ada Pullini Brown for this wonderful presentation and taking us into her long and glorious career as a painter and teacher and activist?